My name is Alexa Burton, but you can call me Lexi. And today, I have some big, exciting news. What I have here in this binder is my first draft of my new science fiction novel, the sequel to From Winter. And I'm going to read the first chapter, give you a sneak peek. Let's get comfortable. Shumaista Taldira stepped through the door of her apartment to once again find the corridor unoccupied. This is unacceptable, she thought, shaking her head in disgust. Rein Coloraine Bassin, the captain of her personal guard, or one of the other Coloraine Torn of her guard, should be posted at her door at all times. But in the quarter of a year she'd been Maesta, more mornings than not, she'd exited her apartment into an empty and unguarded corridor. Unacceptable, she muttered out loud. It was unlikely an assassin would succeed in reaching her this deep in the palace, but she was Shumaista of the Mayakan Empire, the leader of the Mayakan Empire. She should never be not attended by security. She was well aware her popularity was not what one would hope it to be. There was a good portion of the population that would like to see someone else, anyone else, sitting on the throne. With barely contained rage, she stormed off to the office of the Shurain, the council member in charge of the royal guard assignments. Shurain Vassar didn't think much of her either, but as Maesta, she had every right to demand a new captain of her guard if the one assigned to her was failing to perform his job. Taldira exploded through Vassar's office door without knocking or any other polite convention of announcing herself. Much to Taldira's further annoyance, Vassar calmly looked up from the pad he was working on. Is there a problem, my Maesta? I should say there is, snapped Taldira, making a show of looking around the office. A single Coloraine assigned to Vassar's protection detail stood behind him, and another stood outside the door she'd just stormed through. I see no Coloraine Thorn attending me. A slight scheduling oversight on the part of Rein Bassin, to be sure. A slight scheduling oversight, my ass, shouted Taldira, fully at home using the Tiranan expression. This isn't the first time he's failed to schedule protection for me. This isn't even the first time this week. Bassin is worse than inept. He's disloyal and dangerous. I demand a new Rein. And if the problem runs deeper than that, I may find myself in need of a whole new protection detail. Vassar sighed and set down his pad. As you wish, my Shumaista. I will have a look at who is available and have a new Rein assigned to you by the end of the week. Taldira slammed her fist down on Vassar's desk. You knew Bassin wouldn't adequately protect me when you assigned him to me in the first place. You personally saw to that. You will have a list of applications on my desk by the end of the day, and I will select my new Rein myself. Or I will be looking for a new Shurain. Yes, my Maesta, came Vassar's response, though Taldira didn't wait to hear it. She was already storming back through the door into her own office. She was fuming and muttering to herself in English the whole way. Pureblood mentality. What century are these people in? And they're supposed to be beyond humans, developmentally? Taldira didn't even look up as she stormed past her advisor's offices. Shumaida Taro had been by her side since before she left Earth, so he'd understand, and Shumara Eris was away on a whole other planet. Still sans security escort, she slammed the door to her office hard enough she shook the shared walls with both the other offices. Taldira sat down, tempted to bang her head on the desk in frustration. It had been like this since her coronation, since before that, really. For, considering themselves enlightened people, Mayakan society had some truly backwards ideas about half-bloods. Her part-human genetics earned her scores of people in the streets, shouting insults and protesting not only her position as Maesta, but her very presence on the planet. Before she had won the Maesta, half-bloods weren't even legally permitted on Mayaka. That had been one of the first things she changed in her early weeks on the throne. Another was working hard with the newly appointed head of tourism to create the infrastructure for what would hopefully, and quickly, become a thriving tourism industry on the Mayakan homeworld. That is, if she could manage to get a security team that actually did their job. Too many Mayakans wanted to see her off the throne by any means necessary, but she had won the Maesta and intended to hold her position. She had many changes she wanted to bring to the Empire. Changes for the better. Changes for growth and further greatness. But Taldira had a lot of obstacles and prejudice to overcome first. Taldira's heart had begun to slow when there was a knock at the door, which swung open to reveal Taro in the doorway, holding a steaming mug. Seeing the lack of Colerain's security, Taro motioned to one of his own guard, who silently entered the room, taking up position behind the Maesta. "Thought you could use this," said Taro, handing over the mug. Taldira took it in both hands, breathing in deeply. "Coffee," she breathed. "I've known Tehranans for 15 years, and I still don't understand how you can drink that stuff." "Maybe it's a Tehranan thing. Best not say that too loud. You know that isn't true. Mayakans adore coffee. Coffee is what, the third highest import to Mayaka from Terra? Second now, just behind chocolate. I don't know what I would do without my coffee and chocolate." "You drink quarry like the rest of us." Taldira made a face. "That's the stuff made from ground-up roots, right?" "It's a rhizome, but yes." Taldira shook her head. Still not a fan. "No Bassin again today?" "No Bassin ever again, if I have anything to do with it. I told Vassar he'd better have service records for a new Rain to me by the end of the day, or I'd be looking for his replacement as well." "That's bound to go well," Taro half chuckled. "I look forward to seeing the results." Taldira growled. "Another attempt to undermine my authority, and, maybe see me dead, too. But I'm not waiting around for that. Maybe I'll get lucky with who I pick. And maybe I'll just replace Vassar anyway. I can do that, right?" "There'd be backlash. There's backlash to everything. But it's in your power to replace anyone on the council you see fit. The fact you haven't replaced more of them is a bit of an anomaly amongst new Maestas. You know my ascension brought a lot of upheaval all at once. I still think it's best to minimize it a bit. If any of your Coleraine Torn ever show up, just send mine back. I'll be next door if you need me." Taro gently closed the door behind him. The day passed uneventfully. A few meetings, lots of sitting at her desk reading through reports. Her Coleraine Torn showed up around midday at shift change. Just as the soft tones signaling the end of the workday emanated from the speaker panel in her desk, there was a knock on her door. "Enter," called Taldira, and in came one of Shu Vassar's staff, carrying a pad. Taldira sighed and thought to herself, "Don't kill the messenger. He's only doing as he's told." Things like this were typical of Vassar, having the files be delivered by the end of the day, but late enough that Taldira would have to stay late to go over them. Well, it wasn't like she had any more pressing plans. There was no one she associated socially with other than her advisors, and her evening meal would be prepared by her private chef whenever and wherever she requested it, even if it was the middle of the night. "Thank you," she told the man, who nodded, then left. Taldira briefly thought about him, and Vassar for that matter, going home on time, presumably to homes containing people happy to see them. She briefly missed her own family and friends back on Terra, but she wouldn't trade what she had for anything. Her dreams were coming true, and she was effecting real change, albeit slowly. Resigning herself to working late again, Taldira activated the screen on the pad to review it. The Coleraine behind her didn't move a muscle. He, as well as the one outside her office door, would be attending her till evening shift change, whether she left her office or not. Taldira growled in frustration as she flipped through the files on the pad. She really should have expected this type of thing from Vassar, but she'd mistakenly assumed that he'd actually do his job. Every single Coleraine Torn he'd put before her was unsuitable to be the Rain of her royal guard. And not just slightly unsuitable, but drastically so. Coleraine Nevain, due to retire in 2 months. Coleraine Gela, laid up in medical for at least the next 4 months. Coleraine Tander, currently stationed on Terra, and it would take at least a month to report to Mayaka. Coleraine Hassan, dangerously close to being discharged from the Royal Guard for insubordination and performance issues. Coleraine Nuit, a record of avidly opposing Taldira's ascension to Maesta. Coleraine Salalik, a Dakian, barely a quarter of a year out of the academy. The list went on like this. Vassar had to have dug deep to find this many unsuitable Colerantorn in the Royal Guard. The Coleraine behind her choked back a laugh as she frustratedly flipped from file to file. Taldira looked back at him, catching him looking at the pad over her shoulder. I apologize, my maester, he said quickly, turning his gaze back to her office door. Coleraine Malai, might you have an opinion to offer? Are any of these Colerantorn not as inept as they appear on paper? Coleraine Malai stepped forward for a closer look at the pad. You're looking to replace Coleraine Bassin, I assume. Taldira nodded. Malai read the list of names. Not Nuit. She'd likely put a blade in you herself, even knowing it'd mean her own death. Salalik, maybe. I don't know him myself, but my friend Colas is assigned to the same apartment as him. Says he's a decent kid. Takes his job seriously. Malai's eyes darted to her. As do I, my maester. Kid being the key word in that sentence, said Taldira. Malai silently nodded and stepped back into his position behind Taldira. She pored over the files for another hour before slamming the pad down on her desk in frustration, hard enough that the screen cracked. It's definitely time to be done for the day, she thought, standing and stretching the kinks out of her back. As much as she hated to admit it, Salalik was probably the most suitable of the candidates Vassar was offering her. But no experience at all? That would be a big risk. She would take the night to sleep on it, then talk to Taro in the morning. Coleraine Malai escorted her back to her private apartment, where he was relieved by two more Colerantorn, who took up positions outside the door. Taldira glanced at Malai as he walked away. If his inputs were decent, he might have just saved his job, especially if she ended up insisting that the new Rain make a clean sweep of her guard. In the morning, Taldira was surprised to find Bassin in position outside her door with his partner Coleraine. He must have heard his job was in danger. She looked up at him briefly without saying anything before turning to walk towards her office. My maester, he said before falling into step behind her. He said no more, no attempt to engage in conversation. Of course he wouldn't. He wouldn't want someone to hear and think he possibly approved or supported a Dinieta Maesta. Before even entering her own office, she opened Taro's door. You have a few minutes today to talk about those files Vassar sent over? I've got some time now, if you want, and I just started the coffee maker for you. Coleraine Bassin followed her into the office. Stay on the door, Coleraine, Taldira snapped, taking great pleasure in closing the door in his face. Her smug smile was mirrored by Taro when she turned around. That, he said, was just a little bit beautiful. Taldira passed the cracked pad across Taro's desk. He looked at it incredulously. That bad? Taldira just scoffed. Taro read silently for a few minutes. I see, he said slowly and drawn out. Malai said Salalik might be worth taking a closer look at. Nevaeh might be as well. Being appointed Rain to the Maesta may convince him to push off retirement for a few years. He's a competent man. Jayla's competent too. But I can't do 4 months with Bassin until she's back on duty. What about Malai? You said he recommended Salalik. I want to trust Malai, but I'm hesitant to promote anyone under Bassin's command. Are there any of my Colerantorn or heiresses you'd like to look at? Eris was Taldira's other advisor, her Shimara. As adept as your Colerantorn seem to be, I can't just go digging out my own applicants unless I'm also going to replace Vassar. It breaks all the protocols. He makes all the Royal Guard assignments. All I can do is make requests or approvals within what he deems available. You can always replace Vassar too. You seem far too willing to shake things up, Taro. Of course I am. I trained you. And got you here, didn't I? Can't think of a much bigger shake-up to the Empire than that. I want to at least talk to Nevaeh and Salalik before I go rattling any more cages. You read Salalik's background, right? Of course. A Dacian orphan and a criminal as Rain to the Shumesta. And that's not rattling any more cages? Taro smirked. That would be something, wouldn't it? A Dacian Rain to a Dinieta Maesta who is an unwanted Dacian herself. I suppose that is rattling a few cages. I read all his instructors' reports and they were impressed. And his criminal record is laughable. I read the Arbiter's report. There's no way that would have been a conviction on Earth, and I can't understand how it was here. I'm not worried about it. Do you want me to make arrangements for you to speak to him and Nevaeh? Yes, please. Today, if you can. Then, glancing at the closed door, she added, after shift change. Yes, my Maester. And that is the end of chapter 1. If you are interested in what comes next in the story, keep watch here, subscribe. I'll do a video when the book comes out. Or keep an eye on Amazon on my author page. You can follow me there and it'll send you alerts when I publish something new. And in the meantime, if you want a bit more of Mayaka to sink your teeth into now, From Winter, book 1 in this series, is available right now in paperback and on ebook, and will be linked down below. Now, this book still has a little ways to go, so don't expect to see it next week. This is just a rough draft, and I still have a mountain of editing ahead of me. But don't worry, it'll come soon. And as far as the title, well, I think I'll keep that under wraps a little longer. It's fun to have secrets and surprises, isn't it? But that's all I've got for today. So if you enjoyed this, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. And then you'll know when the book comes out. But as always, I'll see you next time. Bye!